of Luffy, the anatomy of One Piece. A lot of you guys seem to be enjoying my sort of videos on like analysis of characters. And I really enjoy watching these as well. And so makes perfect sense that for One Piece specifically, we should check out like Luffy, obviously, like the protagonist, and see what he is all about. Yeah, this is by uh totally not Mark, which I've been recommended and told like a lot of people have been saying this is a really great channel for like One Piece. Yeah, let's check this out.
Hate about online anime discourse. You know what I hate about online anime discourse? You could be riding high off the back of watching your favorite show. You could be expressing why you love it so much, and inevitably, you'll get someone chiming in with a comment like, "Chill out, it's not that deep, bro."
Yeah.
Like, there are most certainly ways of over-intellectualizing
What
our
the
favorite
hell?
stories. And hey, if your relationship with a movie ends with the credits, then more power to you. But I think the idea that there's nothing more to discuss beyond general moment-to-moment content does a real disservice to, well, all of fiction, really. If all that mattered were those plot beats, then I'm sure a work like One Piece wouldn't be held up as a once-in-a-generation type story, let alone one its fans painstakingly dissect. Take the sport of boxing, for example.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like anything that has gone on for so long, I feel like that at least has to be something you can dissect about it or go sort of in depth about it, you know?
Anyone can jump in for big fights and have a
But I know what
great
he's
time, but
saying.
those that follow the build-up of the fights, the psychology of the fighters, and the histories between them will no doubt go in with greater anticipation, but will also gain a greater deal of meaning from the actual event itself. And well, the way in which context and subtext informs events in real life is a pivotal function when applied to fiction. So I guess what I'm saying is, it actually is that deep, bro. And that has been my motivation behind delivering this series of video essays, beginning right here with this one.
Okay.
A series where I explore how the key players of One Piece function, why they are amazing, and through doing so, gain a deeper appreciation for Eiichiro Oda's story.
Wow,
And where better to start than with a character many people love, but some find one-dimensional, and I think is genius. I am, of course, talking about
Monkey D. Luffy.
King of the Pirates! We're going to be the King of the Pirates, I guess. Not the King of the Pirates right now. Oh, okay. Oh, he's so passionate. Even so young.
Luffy's pronounced smile and boundless optimism conceals a much lonelier character. One filled with love and ambition, yes, but also one that deeply desires companionship. This need early on speaks to a childhood we won't see for quite some time, but the seeds are all there. This is all to say that while Luffy himself is an interesting
What the hell?
character, where he shines best is through those he interacts with. In John Truby's book, The Anatomy of Story, he mentions that a common misconception about main characters is that they themselves are the reason the story is interesting. Now, he's certainly not suggesting Luffy isn't interesting. What Truby means here is that, in isolation, a character is made up of many different attitudes, opinions, and backstories, but it's how those aspects of their personality inform their interactions with the world and its characters that make them interesting. In other words, or to put it more simply, our interest in them is born from how our main character interacts with those around them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Tony Soprano's a huge personality, but it's how he navigates the world and speaks to people that brings all of the qualities we love and hate about him to the surface, highlighting and defining what makes him so iconic. And while Tony isn't a hero, the same applies to heroic stories like One Piece. Quote, "The single biggest mistake writers make when creating characters is that they think of the hero and all other characters
as in like the hero is sort of like a separated entity, almost like I guess like the protagonist of the hero is like a step above the other characters.
Separate individuals. Their hero is alone, in a vacuum, unconnected to others. The result is not only a weak hero, but also cardboard opponents and minor characters who are even weaker." In other words, your hero can only be seen or felt as righteous by contrasting him or her to the allies that have their backs or the villains slinking around each and every corner. And if we keep that in mind, it becomes apparent that Oda has designed Luffy from the ground up to be a character that necessitates great writing fundamentals.
Wow, okay, it's like very intentional. I think that makes a lot of sense with the idea of like it can come as a shallow if you write a character like kind of I feel like I've seen it in different series, right? Like with anime specifically, it's kind of like with characters who, inevitably I feel like in these like battle sort of type shows, it's kind of like the main character, you're like the chosen one. You have like a power that's a step above everybody else. And it almost feels like to me personally that like the other characters like exist as people to support the main character. Like their existence is a stepping stone to highlight the protagonist. And sometimes it kind of makes it feel shallow because I think that in order to create strong character writing and to have growth and to see a protagonist's ideals is you put them against other people and characters with stronger ideals as well to fight against the main characters and their aspirations and their goals. And that, in turn, in my eyes, creates an overall stronger narrative when you have other characters that surround the main character can bounce off of, but even sometimes have conflict because the other characters are their own people and it's organic and it's human that maybe our ideals don't always align, that maybe sometimes let's just say like Luffy doesn't like Luffy is a smart person, but I see Luffy as more like he's emotionally smart. He has emotional intelligence and he more has like street smarts, more academic smarts. So like in terms of planning, he may have a certain plan and Nami might be like, hey, that's kind of not the best plan in the world. And you bounce off of that with the dynamics, right? um you fill in the gaps of different personalities with which the main character can bounce off of, and I think that creates a stronger narrative overall.
You've no doubt heard this piece of writing advice before. It's everywhere. Show, don't tell. While not a hard rule in and of itself, it's certainly a valuable piece of advice to heed. If all your hero does is talk about how great of a person he is, ironically, you'll not only fail to convince your audience of his virtue, but through doing so, you'll unconsciously demonstrate how he's in fact a narcissist.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
to avoid this,
exactly.
Robert McKee says in his book Story, quote, "True character can only be expressed through choice in dilemma. How the person chooses to act under pressure is who he is. The greater the pressure, the truer and deeper the choice to character." In other words, if you place your character in a high-pressure situation, the decisions they make in those moments matter far more and mean far more to us reading along than whatever they could try to convince us of by yammering at our faces. It's like real life. Words are cheap. People can lie. And what's genius about Luffy's design is how he engages with the world he inhabits. How he forces those...
I think sometimes people like forget that, it's like characters are inevitably can be a reflection of reality. And if you think about it in the real world, people that have the self-righteousness to say, oh, I'm a great person, like I do this, I do that, it becomes pretentious, right? It becomes self-righteous. Actions speak louder than words, and in order to, I believe, have a character speak for themselves is through the actions they make, and it's through how they interact with the world.
Situations to take center stage naturally because of who he is.
まだ決めたわけじゃないさ。もしいいやつだったら。悪いやつだから捕まってるんです。
Kobe is one of the earliest characters introduced in One Piece, and Oda uses him as a sort of audience POV character,
okay,
a litmus
interesting.
test of Luffy's qualities. He comes to understand that Luffy is a righteous person the same way we at home do, at least if you're watching the anime. Once Luffy reveals himself to Kobe as a stowaway, Kobe is put in a very difficult circumstance. He's low on the totem pole within his pirate crew, and he's got an obligation to reveal Luffy to a superior. But he doesn't. Now, this doesn't stop Lady Alvida later on from discovering Luffy.
Finding him.
Once she does, she begins verbally disparaging and degrading the young Kobe, who's now visibly terrified after being discovered. And this all takes place in front of Luffy. However, like we will see with practically every single instance Luffy encounters potential new crew members, Luffy doesn't take what others say very seriously. He looks at their actions. And for Kobe, he saw how scared he was, how much he stands to lose by not ratting him out, and has learned his dream. He knows that nothing Lady Alvida bellows can possibly be true about Kobe because Luffy has already seen Kobe respond to a difficult
Wow, I think that's such a beautiful and very insightful way of thinking about that. I really, from what I've seen or the clips I've seen, from what I've heard about Luffy, I feel like 100% agree with that. Like Luffy, like he seems like he has this very goofy personality, and I feel like it can feel one-dimensional on a surface level, but it really feels like Luffy, like in battle with the people he interacts with, he actually like kind of stands back and he sort of lets things play out in terms of seeing people's actions and truly, believing in people in the sense of seeing them for who they are through the actions they take. And that shows to me how he has such strong emotional intelligence and perspective to take a step back and not but believe things at face value and see people for their true nature.
Situation by making the choice that was right for him, free from the shackles of his own mental and physical prison. Luffy was able to see what and who Kobe truly is. And this is powerful because we at home get to experience that too. We get to appreciate Kobe as a character now, all the more because we
like
too
from his
have seen him perform in this high-stakes situation. And this pattern is expanded upon with practically every Straw Hat pirate. For instance, when Kobe, someone who Luffy now trusts, warns him about how dangerous Zoro is, Luffy remains consistent. Words are cheap. He knows Kobe doesn't have first-hand experience, and
he's
he
like, I want to
knows
see
what
for
others have
myself.
said about himself and Kobe. Maybe they're wrong too about Zoro. And through this approach, Luffy waits for a moment of character revelation. He waits for Oda to write a scene that demonstrates Zoro's true nature.
食うのかよこれ。もうほとんど泥の塊だぞ。
黙って食わせろ。
This is what makes Luffy such a mechanically
and you see
useful.
his smile, and he sees, like he says, oh, like Zoro is a kind, like he's a nice guy. He's kind at heart because he still ate the rice while the girl made or treated her like. I truly believe in the sense of like you're truly an evil person. You're gonna like abuse a child, like you're beyond repair.
Character in the narrative. Like the rule of thumb, he demands to be shown who people are instead of being told who they are. It's a simple but geniusly elegant character mechanic, and nowhere is that more true than in Arlong Park. For many, this is the first moment One Piece, quote, gets good, and while I don't agree with that statement as I thought it was great from the start, this is the arc where Oda really places this trait of Luffy's front and center for all of us to enjoy, and as a result facilitates one of the most timeless story experiences I've ever had while reading manga. A series of deceptions are made by Nami, who's fooled her whole town into hating her, but not Luffy, who bears witness to another emphatic action from Nami.
Oh my
stabbing
god!
her
Oh
own
my
shoulder
god!
where the symbol of
Oh
her
my god!
enslavement resides. A surface-level observation of Nami would suggest she's part of Arlong's crew, but the actions taken here shows that there's far more to this character both literally and metaphorically. Reinforcing this principle that actions speak more than words do, no matter what anyone on the island says about Nami, no matter what she says to Luffy's face, her actions tell a very different story.
Wow.
A story of a young girl with the weight of the world on her shoulders, now crushing her to her knees. Moving mountains to push away those she loves in order to protect them. And in that moment, and in that emotional crescendo between Luffy and Nami, she cycles through all of her defense mechanisms right before his eyes.
Wow. And it truly does, take a lot, or it's incredible in the sense of how I feel like Luffy, he doesn't, he's consistent in his morality and who he is. Because it is hard in the sense of if say you go to a new place, you go to this new town, everybody is saying that this is an evil person, they betrayed their village, and in some cases that could be true, right? But I think that his ability to continuously believe in people in the sense of seeing their actions and seeing them for who they truly are, and being able to take away those layers and see through the facade and the mask, that is an incredible type of person to be able to do something like that. And especially I don't know, he's young, he's come from, it seems like a small village, and just his emotional ability and his emotional empathy and sympathy to be the type of person to not judge a book by its cover, and want to believe in people and want to see the good in people. We're not saying it in the sense of he's delusional and he wants to let people take advantage of him. It's saying that when he sees people for who they are, and he sees the actions that they take, and it's not reality, he's the person to take action with that. And he's the person to take a stand and say something, and to be one of the only people to do that. And I think that is so powerful.
She physically throws dust at him, verbally berates him, and lies further. But as soon as she realizes that he knows who she really is, she breaks down in front of him, pleading for help. This same narrative approach can be seen with his recruitment of Usopp, Robin, and a host of others too. Every one of the Straw Hats is a lost toy cast aside in one shape or form, ignoring their dreams for one reason or another. Luffy, despite being a boisterous and upbeat character, demonstrates moments of quiet contemplation and observation, as every single one of the Straw Hat Pirates proves themselves either when they think no one is looking, or when they are under serious pressure to act. This is taken to an extreme on Whole Cake Island. There are a host of elements to discuss when analysing the Katakuri fight, and one can certainly point to a number of instances in this conflict where Luffy allows Katakuri to discover more about himself. But it's his hunger strike with Sanji following their bout that left me utterly speechless as a reader.
Oh my god, right in the face, jeez.
This is of course Sanji's arc, so to speak, and there's plenty of time to talk about him in another video, but with regards to Luffy's involvement, this is by far the most he's been pushed away by a member of his team. And this push from Sanji is carried out through action. He physically assaults Luffy and tears down his character. Much like Nami's behavior in Arlong Park, this is all in the name of protecting him from the monsters in his closet. Luffy sees this, recognizes what's happening, and understands that Sanji needs to find his own way back to him. And where he waited for Nami in Arlong Park, Luffy takes this up a notch here, reserving himself to a hunger strike until his return.
However, he loves food, doesn't he, as well?
While I have explored this quality Luffy brings to the likes of the Straw Hat crew, this altercation with Sanji, as well as his run-in and subsequent conflict with Usopp in Water 7, speaks to another interesting area Oda explores with great results. And I think this element of Luffy's character has offered my 3 favorite moments in the entire series for me. The lead up to and subsequent eruption of Usopp versus Luffy remains the single most
Oh
compelling
my,
sequence of
what happened to him? He's like bandages everywhere, Jesus.
character exchanges I've ever come across. This is taking into account stories like Berserk and every film I've seen since I was a child. To say that this scene captures magic in a bottle would be an understatement, and it has everything to do with a narrative technique called structural opposition of desire. Dramatic situations are made most compelling when conflict exists as a structural opposition of goals. Now, that is some weird word spaghetti, but put simply, it means that if one character gets what they want, the other character can't. While it's true that Luffy's goal is to become king of the pirates and to find the One Piece, Oda took the seeds planted in those early chapters and built on them over time. Throughout childhood flashbacks, Luffy's upbeat and ambitious nature is underpinned by abject loneliness. A desire for companionship becomes crystal clear, and it's not hard to see why. His mom is absent, his father has left, Shanks, his hero, has left.
I mean, because I feel like I wonder, because it seems like as a kid, right, from like the bits I've seen, like he is like really loud. He's really like trying to to get attention with like Shanks. It comes across as in my eyes a kid that's seeking validation, a kid that wants to be heard and wants to be seen, and that he goes and hangs out with his brothers in a in wanting to be validated as well. I think there is a lot of him trying to seek out validation from other people, just not in the sense of I feel like he necessarily needs validation to like go after his goals or seek his goals, but just more in the sense of yeah, like like that loneliness that I think he has inside of him that I think a lot of us have. I think it does a lot for him in finding people that have dreams and dreams that people say and push away and like that's dumb, that's stupid, and being shunned by society and shunned by the places that they are in, and having that same goals or aspirations or relatability, I think does a lot for him as a character.
Led to believe one of his sworn brothers was dead, and the other, like everyone else, left him alone to embark on his own adventure. And so, although that initial naivety may have been resolved in Chapter 1, Luffy embarked on his journey into the East Blue harboring a flaw that would not rear its head until much, much later.
Usopp's leaving? Oh my god.
Luffy is surprisingly ill-equipped when it comes to emotional conflict with his crew, and in being forced to deal with it here, this goal of persistent companionship bubbles up to the surface. As Usopp lets forth a devastating outburst brought on by insecurity, Luffy is put in a position wholly new to him. Rather than being an observer of tough decision-making like he did with Nami and Zoro, he becomes a participant. He's forced to choose between his two goals. He doesn't want to break up his family, but in order to be the captain the rest of his crew deserves, he
has
must.
to take a stand.
This is why I love this
He's to take
scene.
responsibility.
For the first time in the series, Luffy is offered a dilemma that speaks to his deepest desires and forces him to choose. And through doing so, brings out the very best of his supporting cast.
迷うな。お前がフラフラしてやがったら、俺たちは誰を信じりゃいいんだよ。
Don't cry.
For me, my favorite part of One Piece has never been the fights, or the grand adventure, or even the colorful locations we all get to explore and enjoy. All of those offer a tremendous amount to appreciate, but nothing compares to the dynamic Luffy has with his crew. Within One Piece, the story itself isn't so much the story of Luffy alone, but instead, his relationship with his crew members and the enemies he faces. Think about it, Luffy's ultimate goal is to become the king of the pirates, to find the fate.
Like, I feel like that is something that I've felt, right, from One Piece is like, I mean, inherently pirates are family, right? And that pirate crews are so close and tight knit together. But I feel like I've never felt like, say, a group of characters, especially a group that is as like big as like 10 people, right? And have such a intrinsic, like, deep, genuine friendship with all of them, and Luffy having, like, that, them all being their own strong, independent people, and having obviously their own interpersonal relationships, but it feels, I feel like, very organic and very real, and it has this very realistic feeling to it where these are all independent people who are a tight-knit family and who are genuinely best friends that all care about each other with all of their heart. And I think I've never, like, felt that so strongly in, like, a cast of characters before, in even just what, like, looking at clips or hearing about the relationships that they have with each other. Like, there's a lot of battle series, of course, or even like slice of life series, when like people are friends, but people come and go, relationships come and go. Um, you know, cast of characters in terms of, I know it's like like an isekai, it's a guild, um, it's like a team. I've never felt such intrinsic family bond and such a tight knit, like such a real relationship with with their crew before.
One Piece treasure. He's unabashedly himself, loud, in your face, and will literally move heaven and earth for his friends. In spite of his boisterousness, he feels like a righteous and well-intentioned character that deeply cares for his friends. But he only feels as righteous as he does because of the characters that don't align with these beliefs within the story. Arlong was cruel, vengeful, and dishonest. Crocodile was cruel too, and deeply manipulative.
Yo, you need to fix that forehead, man, like, down, by the way, like, ugh.
This even extends to the world government, or Emu. These are characters that are totally antithetical to what Luffy has been designed to be. Where Luffy loudly declares his desires and goals, Emu hides and operates in the shadows. Where Luffy will die for his team and carry the lion's share of the burden when necessary, those in power within the world of One Piece not only force others to enact their bidding, but also tear those less powerful than themselves down further. Those are the components that make Luffy stand out, and it works both ways.
I think how I see it is the government and the people that are against Luffy, when they bring people down, Luffy lifts people up. I think Luffy is the type of character, even, like all of these like villains or people who are pirates with yeah, probably a questionable morality in comparison to how Luffy feels. I feel like Luffy would help a small village that is basically worth nothing in the eyes of the government or the beholder of, you know, a villain that is against Luffy. But if he sees them suffering and he can feel that these are good people that are being hurt by somebody stronger than them systematically, Luffy will stand up in defense of them, which in this world it feels like not a lot of people will do such a thing.
Those aforementioned villains feel all the more monstrous when put up against Luffy himself. If you plop Luffy into another story, he might still feel like a fun character, but suddenly he's a lot less interesting. This is because the world of One Piece has been defined and designed around highlighting all of Luffy's strengths and weaknesses.
Wow.
To this end, his crewmates shine a light on his best qualities and in some instances expose his weaknesses, painful as they are to see. But for me, insight into weakness is far more effective than any highlight of strength.
100%
Or
agree.
to put it another way, great characters are often defined by who they are not and what they cannot do. I've often spoken about how I love Goku and Luffy in the same breath, but what they offer mechanically and emotionally within the respective stories is vastly different. I think part of Goku's appeal for me is how much emotional space there is between him and most every other character. Heck, even the audience, really. He doesn't look at situations very often the same way many others do. There is an emotional disconnect that creates this almost superhuman presence at times where he acts as this entity descending from on high to save the day through circumstance. He values his friends, their safety and all the rest of it, but that often takes a backseat to his desire to satiate this need for combat. A desire that is almost impossible for us to fully rationalize. Whereas Luffy, as made evident numerous times throughout his journey, is specifically driven by his desire to protect his friends, to protect their dreams, to protect their treasure. Through his journey to garner a crew, Luffy, in pursuit of his own treasure, has created this secondary treasure, one I do not think he would give up to achieve his primary goal. When Goku lost Krillin on Namek to Frieza, he snapped into a violent rage. It was no longer about saving his friends or being the strong—
I think that's very true in the sense of, because like I don't think it would ever happen if it was like, say there's a crossroads at the end. It's like sacrifice your crew, even one member of your crew, and you like become the king of the pirates. Like if you don't, then it's impossible for you to reach your dream. I don't think he would do that. I don't think he would ever even consider giving anybody up to become king of the pirates. He'd be like, I'll find my own way. We'll find another way together.
Strongest he can be. For that instant, it was just rage and vengeance. When Luffy lost his crew in Sabaody, one by one they were taken away from him, and after each and every one was taken, Luffy became more and more desperate and incensed until they were all gone. And what happened then? He collapses to the ground with nothing left.
Poor baby. He's like
this is a remarkably special moment in the series, and it is such because it's the first time we've seen what Luffy looks like in total despair. Ever a beacon of hope in the series, now there is none. He's lost his crew, he's lost his friends, his family. He's lost his treasure. Each and every time you compare a character to the hero, unconsciously you're forced to distinguish and define the hero in new ways. But what I love about this scene and the arc that precedes it isn't so much what other characters can do for Luffy, but instead what he as a character does to enhance and highlight the supporting cast without any of them being present in the scene. What follows Sabaody is perhaps the single best way Oda could have ever employed this writing principle, and it's all contained in what I think is one of the most critically underrated arcs the series has seen, Amazon Lily.
それにしても随分静かだな、ここは。
As I mentioned earlier, a large part of what defines a character, especially a main character, are the choices they make and the differences that come about thanks to the comparisons between them and other characters. Normally, this technique is used to serve the main character and the main villain of a given area or segment. But what makes this segment of Amazon Lily so impressive to me is that without anyone
naked
other than Luffy himself, he raises his own stock, the villains of this arc stock, and without anyone else to share the screen or page with, he improves our appreciation and consideration of the Straw Hat Pirates just by existing. That is incredible design, and I don't know if I've ever seen any other character do that. And how does
I feel like this highlights like how, like, I don't know, like incredible of a story writer Oda is. I wonder also, I have a question in the sense of, has Oda ever written another manga or another series? I just wonder, like, I feel like it'd be interesting in the sense of like, I wonder what his quality of writing is with like other stories.
To achieve this, simply by allowing Luffy to be Luffy. Alone in Amazon Lily, he falls sick, reminding us of Chopper's usefulness.
Oh my god.
He becomes hungry, reminding us of how important Sanji is to him. He gets lost in
that's interesting. So like showing sort of like what the other characters like do for him and what he's missing. It's kind of like his heart. I kind of see it as like his family is his core. Like his family, like family is like for a lot of people, it's like your treasure, you know. It's what keeps you going in life. It's what keeps you moving forwards. Like you're nothing without your family and nothing without your friends. And it's like he's lost his way without them.
How important Nami's navigation is. He's alone without backup, showing us how important his crew is, and most specifically, Zoro. It intentionally goes on like this until he runs into a situation with Boa Hancock and her crew, where again, simply by Luffy marching to the beat of his own drum, he enhances our appreciation of him and emphasizes the antagonist's defining characteristics.
お前らが俺を殺したくても俺はお前らを殺す気はねえ
Oh, wow.
Normally, when I'm reading a story, I can appreciate the writing based on what I see happening, where I see the story going and how I can see the author deciding to get there. But when we arrived at Amazon Lily, I've never been so taken aback and impressed by a shonen story like this. Writers like Eiichiro Oda want us to resonate with their tales on a deep and personal level, to get lost in them and through doing so gain deeper insight into our own feelings and emotions. This is made evident through the countless flashbacks he incorporates and his dedication to
Wow.
establishing each and every character the crew interacts with. Little their role might be, in Oda's One Piece there are no vapid characters. Everything is deliberate, everything has life. Sometimes the art of storytelling is best delivered when you
That's
don't...
incredible. I feel like I can completely understand why so many people connect with One Piece in that idea. But I think like with a series where it's about, when it's about pirates and when it's about people inherently on their own journeys seeking their own goals and aspirations. I think it's important, the idea of Oda putting so much intrinsic life and personal character and the same level of heart than any other character. I think is it feels like that's what gives the world life. That's what gives it heart. And I think that truly feels like what steps One Piece apart is that it feels like One Piece isn't just like any other shonen series. It feels like it is a journey and it is a series where it's not just a world, but it's a world full of life, full of people that are living their lives and have their own goals and aspirations and feelings and heart and soul. And I think that is truly something that I think is incredible.
Notice the subtle techniques and themes that reside underneath the surface. And far be it from me to deny anyone the wonderful experience it must be to get sucked away into a world to enjoy it how you want to. And if all you get from Luffy's character is the amusement of a funny, stretchy rubber man who hits the bad guys hard and loves food, then so be it. There's certainly value in that form of escapism. But it's important to realize that that is not all there is to One Piece. And that's okay. It is precisely why Eiichiro Oda is a once-in-a-lifetime storyteller. In his immersive and colorful world where people can wield the power of supernatural beings, bending elements and people to their will through magic and political influence, when all of that is present in your story, and your most powerful moments can still be a kid placing a hat on a young girl's head, or a moment of utter despair when one falls to his knees, then that is when you know you are dealing with something truly special, something with artistic substance, and in the case of Monkey D. Luffy, an unmistakably genius character.
Wow. I think it's like incredible writing to say I know a lot of kids have people and also like, as well people have grown up with One Piece. I think that being able to have a story that appeals to children and to kids like like teenagers, young adults, but then still keeps all of its maturity, all of its subtlety, all of its depth, but can appeal to basically anybody. I think that shows like incredible once in a lifetime type of story writing that I feel like it's almost this idea of maybe somebody who grew up One Piece and you watch One Piece as a kid and you re-look at scenes and you re-look at One Piece and then it's like, oh wait, actually I didn't notice this. I didn't notice that, or it can create some form of new impact on you that maybe you didn't realize when you saw it for the first time. I think that is what makes incredible story writing and world building. But anyway, so yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Generously, please consider subscribing if you appreciate the video. Let me know if you guys would like me to, yeah, just do more videos, learning and checking out different characters of the world of One Piece and other anime. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next one. Bye bye.